So less than a year after September 11th, 2001, I was in school and had the opportunity to take a comparative religion class. And it was during the month of Ramadan, the holiest month in the Islamic calendar. And we're coming up on the end of Ramadan right now. It ends either tomorrow night or the night after, depending on when you see the moon. And the only thing I knew about Islam was what I had seen on the television after 9/11. And growing up in West Texas, in the Panhandle, a very white, very conservative part of the world, you can imagine what that message was. It was not altogether positive. But we were taking this comparative religion class, and I was kind of a religion geek, and so I was pretty excited about it. And we did almost like a show and tell, is how I remember this. And we were looking at different sacred texts. And I remember that my friend, who I'm going to call Aisha, because she might watch this and she'd be embarrassed if I use her real name, she brought in her Quran. And I had known Aisha since we were 3 years old. And I didn't know that she was Muslim. I knew that her skin color was different than mine, but it never occurred to me that there might be something else. And we broke into small groups to go out and kind of learn about these sacred texts. And we went out to the hallway, and Aisha was holding her Quran. And I said, Aisha, can I hold it? Can I look through it? And she goes, yes. And she started to reach out, and she paused. She goes, but it can't touch the floor. I was like, oh, okay. And I kind of took it, right? And being like a young teenage boy, like your first instinct is to try and impress the girls and like fake drop it. But I remember taking it and like feeling this connection. She held one end and I held the other. And like looking into her eyes and seeing how important this book was to her. And feeling that connection. I was like, there is nothing in the world that would make me put this on the floor. And I remember just being kind of transformed or being open to transformation at that point. Because this was not a book that I believed in, right? But I still had a relationship with it now. And it's one of those moments that I think back in my life that sent me here, right? That I had this encounter with something different, and rather than closing myself off to it, I tried to be open to it. So that brings me to this encounter with another religion. Listening to a podcast, and there's a Jewish rabbi, Reconstructionist rabbi, I believe, whose name is Nachum Ward-Lev. And he likes to say, when he goes to his congregation, he says, as a Jewish rabbi, I don't believe in God. And as a Jewish rabbi, I'm not asking you to believe in God. He says, as a Jewish rabbi, what I believe is that I have to have a relationship with God. And I'm asking you to have a relationship with that which is holy. That's a different way to think about faith. That's not just about belief, either in something far away or something near, but it's more about relationship. So we're talking about mysticism today, talking about Sufism. You've heard about our transcendentalist ancestors from East Asian religions, from the Kabbalah. My definition of mysticism, people who are mystics, are those people whose faith is primarily about relationship, primarily about being open to the transformative nature of that relationship with something, the ground of being, perhaps, the nature of reality, the great I am, the natural world, the humanity that surrounds us. Another way to talk about this relationship is to have a relationship with love with a capital L, my favorite one. Sufism, right, often called Islamic Mysticism, big fans of love with a capital L. That's their theology. Right? Jane loaned me a book on Sufis, and I'm forever grateful because it gave me a lot of information that I didn't have. Because Sufism is often labeled Islamic mysticism. But according to Jonas Atlas, that's not entirely correct, that it's not a separate current within Islam. He says it's not a separate branch of the tree. In many ways, it is more like the sap of the tree that springs from its roots and flows up to the leaves. It is entwined into all the other branches, groups, and schools. It says that Sufism is also, first of all, a series of knots. It is not a separate religion. It is not a philosophy. It is not even a mysticism, he says, as that word is usually conceived. It is best to call Sufism a way of experiencing reality as love itself. It is best to call Sufism a way of experiencing reality as love itself. It's a very UU idea. That the highest expression of God is as lover and beloved. Common Sufi saying is, God is not your jailer, God is your lover. Jalaluddin Rumi, 13th century Persian Sufi, the founder of the famous whirling dervishes, my personal favorite religious group of all time. The whirling dervishes, known for entering a trance-like state and dancing with the energy of the universe, with the motion of the ocean, the flow, the juice, the mojo of tapping into it, being open to it. This mysticism that is about a relation with something outside of yourself. So if mystics are these relationally driven, sometimes whirling, dancing, loving, beloved people who are about building community, who see love with a capital L in all things, have a kind of universalist idea. Not that much different from us, I think. The word dervish, as in whirling dervish, means one who sits on the threshold, one who sits at the open door, ready for transformation. That's how I felt when I held that Quran all those years ago. That I'm on this doorstep, not into something new or some totally foreign tradition that's not mine, but into being open and in relationship with something that is different, that I might learn something from it. So I wonder if we have any mystics here. Right? Linda gave this incredible reflection about how sometimes mystical experiences, religious experiences, where we feel connected to everything, the oversoul, anything, the universe, the cosmos, sometimes they are few and fleeting. I hear that a lot from Unitarian Universalists. That even though they might be sitting on the threshold, they think, no, mysticism, that's a little too, it's a little too out there. I'm rational, science-based. I'm a thinker. I'm up here a lot. It's hard for me to be here. I'm not spiritual. I'm not this. I'm not that. Sometimes people learn about my theology and they say under hush breath, I'm an atheist. Great. But I will say, after having conversations with my colleagues, I don't like the word atheist. Not that I don't like atheists. I don't like the word atheist. And my colleagues brought this to me. They said, I don't like the word atheist either because it talks about what I'm not. I want to talk about what I am. And it puts theism as the norm. Right? It puts someone like me as the norm. And that's been true forever. We could do without that, I think, for a little bit. So what would it be to embrace who you are? Rather than saying, I'm not spiritual, I'm not mystical, I'm not religious. I think you are. I think you are. I think by virtue of your brain and your conscience and your breath and your life and your inherent worth and dignity, that gold that is within you, I think you are a dervish. Even if you don't dance. I think you are one who is open to the threshold and the doorway of love with a capital L. Sufi teaching says that God created the human being as a mirror capable of holding and expressing the totality of the divine reflection, including the whole consciousness of nature and the universe. That encompassing all of that in one body is what it means to be fully human. So you may not resonate with God language, but I think we can all grapple with what it means to be fully human. Because isn't that the point of everything? Right? The fundamental question. Saying yes to things, no to things. What is, what isn't? Who am I not? To be or not to be? So the downside of our humanity is that oftentimes we feel like we are not, and oftentimes we are told we are not. I am not this, I am not that, I'm not spiritual, I'm not good enough, not tall enough, not thin enough, not smart enough, not spiritual enough, not beloved enough. I don't love others enough. For me, religion is about hearing, yes, you are. I'm not spiritual, yes, you are. I'm not smart enough, yes, you are. I'm not this enough, yes, you are. That's the universalist part of our heritage. Something that Karl Barth, a Christian theologian, called the great cosmic yes. Said that God says yes to you. Paul Tillich, who I'm a big fan of, says what it means to be human is to find a way to accept the fact that you are accepted by that which is greater than you. To accept the fact that you are accepted, that you are enough. And being fully human to me is about wrestling with those yeses and those nos that we get from our society, that we get from our deep insecurities, that we get from our religious traditions that might have harmed us in the past. So I personally believe that I think everyone can be a mystic. Everyone can engage in mysticism. I also think everyone can be a UU, but that's like another story. But I get that it might not work for everyone. It might not resonate with you. And part of this journey is having the courage to explore for yourself, to find what you feel yes to and what you feel no to. And reading Jane's Sufi book, they talk about the names of God. That the first is Allah, right? And they're trying to F the ineffable by coming up with all these names. But that the first one is made up of two parts, Ah and La. And that the Al, the El, is related to God. It also means yes. And that La and Lo mean no. Yes and no together. The full spectrum of the universe in one thing. Trying to be fully human. Right? And that's the deal. That's the sum of existence. Trying to figure out what you are and what you're not. What is and what isn't. Trying to balance yes and no. Individuality, relationship and community. Diversity and unity. Right? These are very UU problems that we have all over the country. That we have not just in Unitarian Universalism in America. This is the big question. So while there might be this great cosmic yes, there are some things to which we have to say no. There are some limits, right? There are things that I am not. I'm not and will never be an Olympic gymnast, much as I want to be. I'm not, will never be a fighter pilot with excellent eyesight. I'm not and never will be a scientist or a mathematician. I'll never be a Muslim, a Jew, a Hindu. Never is a long time, but those are not my cultures. That's not my experience. Right? It's not something I can just step into that I can't just believe in all of a sudden. But it doesn't mean that I can't say yes to having a relationship with these things, with people who practice these traditions. Rabbi Nachum Ward-Lev talked about his spiritual hero, who was Rav Kook, who was the head rabbi in the state of Israel, or not, I guess not the state of Israel, because it was before that, in the 1930s, when the kibbutz movement was coming up, and it was socialist and Marxist and communist and freedom, and not like the staid religious practice. And Rav Kook, the head rabbi, was able to see the holy at work in it. And that was different and difficult for a lot of people. I think about that. That there are ways that we can say yes to things that are not totally resonant with us, but that we might be in relationship with, that we might be open to, that we might practice a little mysticism. So when I talk about the relationship, the interconnected web of all existence, that's one of our principles. That's what I talk about when I mean the holy, the spirit of life, sacred with a capital S, love with a capital L. And I think that to be a common, everyday mystic, even if you don't feel spiritual enough, religious enough, to be a mystic is to be open to that spirit flowing through the natural world, like Emerson and Fuller talked about, to finding the beloved in the birds and the trees, in the plants and the bugs, in the night sky, in the northern lights, in morning dew, in thunderstorms, and in June sunshine. The deep connection to the oversoul that is part of our heritage is mystical, radical, heretical, and wholly appropriate. It comes down to seeing what Linda talked about, these I-thou relationships. That sometimes we see things as objects. I could have seen that book as an object. But in taking hold of it, it became deeper. An I-thou relationship, as Martin Buber talks about, that says there is holiness inherent in all things, including us. And that our task is to find how best to say yes to it. How to see God in those things. How to see holiness in those things. In trees, in prayers, in music, in our very bones. To be mystics, because we all have the capacity to practice a little mysticism. Can you just nod your head if you're with me here? Okay. Even if we aren't able to see it, even if we think love with a capital L is too much for us, it's too woo, we have the ability. I truly believe this. I believe this is the message of Unitarian Universalism. And I believe it's the message of religion. It's about constantly reminding people how beloved you are, that there is gold within you. And that we have these barriers, right? That we sometimes don't feel like we're enough. We don't pray enough. Don't know how to pray. I don't believe in that. I can't do that. Rumi, 13th century, Sufi poet, talking about love with a capital L, right? Your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it. Your task is not to seek for love, for it is there. Your task is to find all the barriers and the stuff within you that you have built against it. So I would never hand you something and ask you to believe in it because I said so. That's not how we do things here. I would not ask you to believe in God as I understand God with a capital G, nor ask you to believe in my truth, because I cannot tell you what your truth is. All that I can ask you to believe in is yourself. To believe in that you have all the tools that you need to go on this journey, to find something that resonates with you, to find a tradition that speaks to you, speaks for you, and to believe that there is something greater at work in all of it. That there is something holy within all of it. That there is love with a capital L in all of us, in all of you, and it is waiting for you to find how best to say yes to its beauty. So there's love with a capital L. There's yes with a capital Y. There's beauty, and you are beloved with a capital B. May you dance with that love, as the dervishes do. Say yes to its presence in all things, as the dervishes do. And always remember that the beauty inherent in being beloved is what makes you fully human. May it be so. Amen.